but it's strange that the Albanese government is so dead against nuclear power. When even, Matt, you couldn't get a more left-wing government, I think, than the Canadian one right now in the Western world. And yet it is now investing in new small modular nuclear reactors. It's saying this is the way to fight global warming. Here is Canada's Natural Resources Minister.
Nuclear power is one source that can help address the future demand gap and help us reach our climate targets. And that is why I was very pleased this morning to join my friend and colleague, Minister Smith at Darlington, to announce federal participation in the very first commercial small modular reactor project in Canada.
And even the Labor Premier of South Australia, Peter Malinauskas, says the ideological opposition to nuclear power, he says, is ill-founded. Nuclear power is the source of baseload energy with zero carbon emissions. So please, Matt, tell me why the Prime Minister still doesn't get this.
Well, he seems to be wedded to a ideology, an obsession of the 1980s. I think the Prime Minister seemed to cut his teeth protesting following the Chernobyl disaster and against nuclear or for nuclear disarmament back in those days. And the world has moved on. It's basically Anthony Albanese, Chris Bowen and the penguins in Antarctica that are left opposing nuclear energy, because it's only Antarctica and Australia. We're the only two continents on the planet that don't have a nuclear power station. Every other continent in the world has lots of them and is building many, many more, as your clips there showed. It's not just, of course, the Canadian government, it's also the Biden administration. They're investing millions and millions in nuclear technologies, supporting new nuclear power stations. The government's really got to get on this train here. And while I think the coalition, we also need to drop our net zero obsession. We need to drop our share of this scare campaign on the global warming side of this to get back to real world solutions. The first thing we need to do is actually invest in all types of power. There's a role for wind and solar, but we should be investing in nuclear energy as well. We should be investing in coal. We should be investing in gas. We should be having an abundance of energy so we can get your power bills down. You keep getting told that renewable energy is the cheapest form of power. How does that work out when your bill arrives? It doesn't seem to be getting any cheaper, does it?
No, the proof is right there. Matt, you said we also got to tackle the global warming scare, and you're not going to get an argument from me about that. In fact, today there was more reason to think this warming scare really is a fake. For instance, we have been told, Matt, for years now, I would guess it's about going on 20 years, probably even longer, told by the ABC that the Great Barrier Reef is dying, or in fact almost dead already, because of global warming. But today, I nearly fell off my chair. It finally admitted what we've been saying for a long time, that the reef is fine. Have a listen.
Last year, the Great Barrier Reef between Cape York and Proserpine recorded the highest levels of coral cover since monitoring began in the 1980s. The latest scorecard finds the situation remains similar, with only small decreases this year.
The reef has demonstrated an amazing resilience and an ability to recover. And at this particular point in time, the Great Barrier Reef is doing fairly well.
And then he went on to say, but global warming is going to come back and it'll be bad. Well, these projections, when is the ABC going to apologise for its years of predictions and scares that we're going to lose the reef after having listened to the reality right there?
Well, I'm not going to hold my breath, Andrew, but to me, this whole saga, the Great Barrier Reef saga, highlights what I was just saying, that there's this disconnect between the people in the real world and the scientists in the ivory towers. The scientists in our academic institutions over the last decade have spent their careers bemoaning the reef, forecasting its demise or early death, whereas those of us who actually live there, and I live just a few kilometres from the start of the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park, those of us that live there have known for a long time that this is a natural cycle, that we have had a lot of storms and cyclones which destroyed some of the reef. But we knew that it would come back. And you talk to the old timers there's a lot of old time knowledge. They say there's nothing particularly sensational about what's happening. And guess what? Those old timers have been proven right again. And so maybe, again, we should just get ourselves grounded a little bit more and focus on those people who are familiar with the natural local environment, listen to them, rather than people whose whole careers depend on writing more and more grants about how terrible things are in this world.
Well,
that's what we've had.
Yeah, put your finger on it. Yeah, put your finger on it, Matt. all the
money.
scares have resulted in unbelievable amounts of federal government grants to various scientists and bodies there. Matt Canavan, thank you so much indeed for your time. Really appreciate that.